What's up guys, Sean here, and in today's video I'm going to be reviewing the Zero Tolerance 308. This is a massive big boy of a knife. This thing is an absolute tank. I have a size large hand, so give you a little bit of an idea of the size of this thing. I will put it up next to my SPYDERCO Shaman and my paramilitary too. So not a whole lot longer than the two of these, but it's taller, a little bit thicker, I believe. Yeah, a little bit thicker, and a little bit longer.
That's what she said.
I mean, overall it's just a massive knife. Not insanely heavy. It does have some weight to it. I'll have to double check and look at the specs to give you an exact weight. But first I'll show you what I'm carrying today. I'm carrying my Smoky Mountain Knife Works exclusive Arctic Storm Fat Carbon Paramilitary 2 that I blade swapped. This had the DLC coated M4 blade, and I swapped it with my DLT trading exclusive. So now I have the S90V blade on this bad boy, and it's rocking a sand washed Lynch Northwest deep carry clip. Amazing knife. I carry this one a lot. I just think this Arctic Storm on the PM2 just looks absolutely gorgeous. And then I'm carrying my my Cutlery Shop exclusive CTS XHP Shaman with the stonewashed blade. This is the one that came with orange G10 scales, and I swapped them out for Serpent's Front Customs, my Carta scales. These are skinny scales. Then I have the MXG Gear Shaman clip on here, and some this is actually the factory hardware, and I just heat anodized it bronze. So pretty cool. Both my Shaman and Paramilitary 2 are sharpened on the KME to 17 degrees per side, and they are both very sharp, and they both cut very well. So two great knives. I love both of these and carry both of these quite often. So I'm going to try to keep this review a little bit shorter, so we're going to get straight into the grading scale on this one. Okay guys, so our first category is ergonomics. The ergos on this thing gets a 5 out of 5. It feels great in hand. There are absolutely no hot spots, and it fills out the hand perfectly. If it was any taller, I don't think I could get a secure grip around the handle, but I mean, this is kind of maximum size that I think I could comfortably get my hand around, and it just fills out your hand nice and just makes you want to go to work with this thing. So great ergos. For the clip, we get a 4 out of 5. The ZT clips typically aren't you know, they're not the best. Some knives they are much worse on. For example, the ZT 0640, that one you absolutely have to get a Lynch clip for, because the factory clip on that one, it's nearly impossible to get it in and out of your pocket. But with this one, the clip actually works. It's not so bad. So I just figured I'd mention that. And for carry, we get a 3 out of 5. Now, for a knife this size, I have to admit it doesn't carry horrible, and that's why I gave it a 3 instead of a 2 or a 1 or a 0. So it is perfectly carryable, but just know this is going to take up a large chunk of your pocket, and you're probably not going to be able to get your hand down into your pocket while this knife is inside of it. So Yeah, it's just something to consider. And when it comes to the action, this thing gets a 5 out of 5. The action on this is absolutely amazing. Check out this completely fall shut or drop shut action. Perfectly tuned detent. Some people complain and say it's too strong, but you have to make sure you don't have your fingers pressed down on the lock bar, because if you do, it'll make it really hard to flip. And they did a much smaller flipper tab than you would typically find, and the design of this flipper tab I actually enjoy quite a bit. Nice and small, compact, some nice, not too aggressive jimping, and the way your finger lands right here just feels natural. So it feels like a good angle that they put it at, and you have just the right amount of leverage to pop that blade out, and the blade comes flying out every time. No need for wrist. We have a nice early detent, so you get past that secondary detent almost instantly, so you're not going to be double clutching with this, so that is nice. But yeah, the action is absolutely butter on this guy. For the hardware, we get a 4 out of 5. The reason for this is because there's a lot of T6s, and God knows I'm not a fan of T6s, but to be fair, this isn't a knife that you're really going to have to take apart very often. I've actually never disassembled this knife completely. I swapped out the screws, but that's it. I have never undone this pivot, and this thing is completely rock solid. No play in any direction, no vertical, no lateral. It's made well. So you're not going to have any issues as far as the hardware goes, as long as you have good quality TORX drivers like the WIHA soft touch drivers that I recommend in every video. It's always linked in the description. Highly recommend. If you don't want to strip screws out, get yourself some quality TORX drivers. It makes a world of difference. The next category is the aesthetic of this, and the aesthetic of this is what ultimately sold me on this knife. You gotta admit, between the tiger stripes on this and the coated titanium frame lock side with this milled pattern, my gosh, that is absolutely sexy. Guys, it really is. This is a very good looking knife, and you have a nice little swedge going on right here. We have a nice sort of like a spear point. Yeah, I'd probably call this a spear point. It just looks good. I think they could have done away with this hole right here, but nonetheless, I still think this is a very attractive knife. So going on to the price category, the price gets a 3 out of 5. Yeah, the price gets a 3 out of 5. They raised the price on this guy to $320, I believe. I guess you could, maybe I'll make it a 4, okay? Because maybe you could justify that price. I hate when companies raise their prices every year, but what can you do? the cost of materials go up, the cost of living, the cost of rent, the cost of your electricity bill to keep the factory running, the cost of, you know, to pay your workers, everything goes up. So I mean, it kind of just is what it is. So I guess I shouldn't, you know, hold that against them so much. So yeah, I guess we'll do a 4 out of 5 for the price, because this is a very high quality knife. Moving on to the fit and finish, we get a perfect 5 out of 5. Like I said before, I haven't needed to disassemble this, but I did swap the screws out, and this thing has never came loose on me. It has stayed rock solid since I've had it, and the action has been completely butter smooth since day one. So there just hasn't been any reason at all for me to need to disassemble this, because the action is perfect. There's, you know, there's no feeling of needing to improve it. And I mean, it's just a well-built knife. When you get this knife in hand, just trust me, you can feel that it's a well-made knife. And then after you have it for a little bit of time and you get some use on it and everything, that will just further reassure yourself that this is a very high quality knife. You know, everything is just done very beautifully. No sharp edges. Everything sits nice and flush. We got perfect centering. Excellent tolerances. So yeah, they did great with the fit and finish. The acoustics on this also gets a 5 out of 5. This knife sounds very authoritative. When you deploy it, it makes a loud clank like it means business. It would probably have a similar effect as to racking a shotgun in a home defense situation. You know how they say, you know, get a 12 gauge pump, because when an intruder hears you racking the shotgun, that will put the fear in them. Well, this knife is kind of like the same concept, because when that blade flies out and you hear that clank and you see this massive, you know, aggressive looking knife, you're probably gonna think twice about whatever you were about to do. For the lockup, we get a perfect 5 out of 5. We have a rock solid lockup. It looks like about 35% to me, just looking at it real quick. Lock bar access, also 5 out of 5. Now, the lock side is not raised up at all, and there's not jimping, and this isn't particularly wide in between these liners, but it's a very short throw that you have to move this, and it's not a lot of tension behind it, so it's pretty easy to move it out of the way. I've never had an issue disengaging it. I find it very easy actually. So yeah, completely rock solid lockup and excellent lock bar access. So 5 out of 5 for each of those. Moving on to the factory edge, I gave this a 4 out of 5. We had even bevels on both sides, so I had, you know, something nice to work with, but it wasn't very sharp. You know, I wasn't impressed with it, but I mean, I've come to find that a lot of knives just don't come from the factory with very impressive edges, and you know, maybe I just got spoiled with all the SPYDERCOs because I primarily only purchased SPYDERCOs for a couple years. And if you guys own SPYDERCOs, you should know by now that every single SPYDERCO comes from the factory razor sharp. So, you know, these other companies, step your game up, guys. It can't be that difficult to get a decent edge on your knives, especially when you're paying top dollar for them. So, moving on, for the handle, I gave it a 5 out of 5. I really like the feel of this. You have a pretty neutral handle. I mean, you can slide your hand around pretty much anywhere, but with your pointer finger all the way choked up into this where your flipper is and everything, you feel pretty locked in still. And then you have some nice well spaced out jimping right there. Handle just feels good. This textured pattern feels really good. Now, the show side is a G10 scale. The frame lock side is coated titanium. However, it doesn't feel too much different from side to side, so it still feels really good in hand. And I mean, it looks nice, it feels nice. I think they did a good job with it, so I gave it a 5 out of 5. For the centering, also gets a 5 out of 5. This thing is dead nut center, straight down the middle. Never had to adjust it. It you know, it came centered and it has stayed that way. Now for the cutting category, this is where it takes a hit. This thing scored a 3 out of 5 in the cutting category. The blade geometry on this is clearly intended for hard use, and I'm not talking about hard use cutting. Say the Shaman, this is a knife that is intended for hard use cutting, okay? So you can process a lot of cardboard, whatever, comfortably and effectively with a knife like this, or say the PM2, but you wouldn't want to pry with either of them because they have pretty acute points or pretty acute tips. This, on the other hand, your steel is a little bit more beefy. Now it doesn't look like it's super thick, but that's because you have such a tall blade grind, so in proportion it's not, and that helps allow this knife to cut through material. But it's just, you know, don't expect it to be a laser beam. And I have reprofiled this. I think this is at 20 degrees per side, or maybe 22, something like that. I tried to keep it pretty close to factory. I think I only dropped it down a degree or two because I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep it, but I think I probably am going to keep this one. So maybe I'll drop it down a couple more degrees and see what I think. But so far, I've been extremely impressed with everything except for the cutting performance, which is kind of a bummer. But, you know, a big knife like this, it kind of reminds me of something that, you know, maybe a military member or, you know, police or people that do private security, or for any kind of tactical self-defense role or even offensive role. I mean, I wouldn't want to have somebody go up against me with this blade. And it does come to a nice point. I believe this is a spear point, so penetration should not be an issue. So you know, when you're carrying this knife, you're not worried about anybody running up on you and trying to steal your wallet, because that would be a really, really bad day for them. Moving on to the materials, we get a 5 out of 5. We have CPM 20 CV blade steel. We have titanium frame lock handle, or titanium frame lock, and a G10 show sides handle. Blah! G10 show side scale. God, that was a tongue twister. And yeah, I mean, pretty simple, but you can tell that all the materials are top quality, and it's built nice, guys, and it's nice materials. For the fidget factor, this also scored a 5 out of 5. The action on this is very addicting. Now, technically, you only have one method of deployment, which is the flipper. However, if your hands aren't greasy, you can get the meat of your finger onto the blade. There's no fuller or anything, but if you're good, I can usually there you go. It's not really a reliable method, but yeah. But the flipper action is excellent. So, and with the sounds and how smooth it is and the ease of the lock manipulation, this is just really enjoyable to flick. Moving on to the design, this also gets a 5 out of 5. Great design. I think Zero Tolerance did a really good job with this knife, and I think it makes like the perfect camping knife or deployment knife, or it's just a hard use badass knife. And lastly, for the value, I gave it a 4 out of 5. And the reason for that, you could argue that it's worth a $300 price tag, so it's not that you're not getting your money's worth. But with these zero tolerances, some of them maintain their value, some of them go up in value. Some of the ones that were discontinued and stuff, that there were fewer made of, but the 308 is not one that is in short supply. I mean, these things have remained in stock everywhere for a couple years now, I believe. Probably at least 2 years, maybe going on 3 years. So plenty of these out there, and they do not maintain their value as far as the secondary market goes. So if you pay $320 for this, even if you don't cut with it, say you just took it out a couple times and messed around with it and maybe carried it, and you never cut, so the blade's perfect, but maybe you got a scratch on the clip or something, that's gonna knock 50 or 60, maybe 70, $80 off the value as far as what somebody's going to be willing to pay. And that's where you're kind of losing out a little bit on the value. But let's add all this up. I don't want to make this one too long. Okay, so altogether we have a total of 91 out of 100 points. It was sitting at 90 out of 100, but I raised the price category from a 3 to a 4 because when you're talking about competitive options, there's not too much that can compete with this in the price category. So if you're looking for an overbuilt tank of a knife that has that mixed strider, tiger stripe kind of aesthetic to it, and this knife reminds me a little bit of some Strider knives, and then it has a little bit of some Hinder vibes, and then some original Zero Tolerance Designs vibes going on with it. So kind of a combination of those. That's how I see it. And I mean, guys, this thing is badass. This is a sexy knife. I wish I could tell you it cuts better, because you know, ultimately a knife's main crucial function is to cut. So when they don't cut very well, that is a major disappointment. But I can still honestly tell you that I do recommend this knife. I think it's a really nice knife. And yeah, so that's going to be it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you like what I'm doing, please hit the like button and subscribe. It helps boost the algorithm and get my videos recommended out there to more people just like you and me. So thank you guys for watching. I love you guys. Jesus loves you. Stay tuned, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.